Hello everyone, this is Michael Gucci from Airdrop Stack and Telos 21 Zephyr. This is a video recording of our Champagne blockchain meetup on 15th of March. Our guest speaker today is Raman from Investing with a Difference and Blockstart. As many of you may know, Raman is the founder of Investing with a Difference. It's one of the largest proxies on EOS and Telos. He's also the founder of Blockstart, which is a incubator for developers developing on EOS IO-based blockchains. Raman also organized the Scaling Blockchain Conference last year, which was very well attended. Raman is very well known for creating good educational video content on YouTube. His YouTube channel, Investing with a Difference, has more than 4,000 subscribers. It's a pleasure to have Raman with us today. Please enjoy the show. Thank you.
I can start with an introduction on how we got involved in EOS. I think is a very exciting. EOS IO itself as a software, we are pretty excited. Since I come from a background of working on technology, working on new products, especially in the mobile systems and software, where we did a lot of work on the apps world. And I think overall, EOS IO is exciting from the perspective. I think everybody who is in part of the blockchain, they are looking for making real world changes. And that's what we were all waiting for after Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on. And now I think my perspective on EOS IO has always been that this is the first blockchain which got me excited that we can really build real products, real blockchain-based solutions. It can scale to the needs of real world. And I think that's got me involved. And it's all, from there on, it was a matter of how do we, I think there was a lot of exciting pieces beyond the technology, because beyond scalability, I think we talk about governance. We talk about running a truly democratic chain. It's still an experiment, as I understand, as seeing as the way voting is evolving. I think mostly this particular crowdcast, we also wanted to talk about how, as a proxy, I see this world evolving. So I would share a few more ideas, but feel free to send me questions on chat. I think that's the only mode which is working right now. So do let me know what you would like to hear. But I think overall, if you see, the biggest challenge today is when we say, how do we get people behind a technology? What was the blockchain? The whole idea of blockchain was that you can build trustless systems where people do not have to be worried about the kind of security of the network, about the whether you can trust your data. So it's blockchain is nothing but a decentralized database. When it's very decentralized, it's a very loaded word. It is not really understood very well by people. The matter of fact is, the only thing businesses need is decentralized is very, as I said, subjective word. What businesses need is a distributed ledger which can solve today's issue of trust. And EOS IO takes a middle path of creating a DPoS, which relies on a certain number of trusted entities who are selected in a trustless manner by the stakeholders. That's why it's called proof of stake. They can be moved out of the network if people lose trust in them. So that's the whole idea. And now a lot of people don't understand, coming from a Bitcoin, Ethereum world, you do not understand the difference. When people talk about EOS not being a blockchain, or there have been a lot of controversies around that, because it's very difficult to understand the differences when you have a predefined mindset about what is a blockchain. Now, blockchain, as I said, blockchain, decentralization, these are very, very generic terms. They do not necessarily mean much for businesses. What matters for businesses is whether you can use these databases to go and create a model which does not exist. And that what is that model? That model is where you do not have middlemen, you do not have trusted entities defining the rules, and you can trust a network to run some certain like we call it smart contracts, or I think a lot of people who are involved in the technology, they already know how this blockchain applications work. And basically, you are running it on a code. You're distributing your database over the network, which is helping you achieve results which are not possible in today's world without using a trusted entity like cloud service or middlemen like banks or other players who are currently kind of not transparent. They are hidden behind a certain security layers, which we call them, and that creates some sort of trusted environment. Now, coming back to EOS IO now on how I see it, I think what I see is it's an evolving product. It's a new technology. We are looking at these models of people, token holders voting and trying to decide who is the best node, or what is the value creation by these nodes to go and run the network, so that we can build technology on the top. So there are two aspects. One is, of course, the technology, which is defined by anybody running. Like, it doesn't matter who runs the node, your apps will still run. And the other aspect is, why did we even go to blockchain? Why did we even go to EOS and not build directly on cloud? That is the trust aspect and the trustless aspect. And that's where I think proxies and voting play a big role. That's where I think I got involved in voting, because, of course, if you believe in blockchain, if you believe in the difference it provides as compared to a standard traditional platforms, you need to build a very strong processes. So I think that is something which all the proxies are doing very well, I would say. And there's something which we need to keep promoting. And my view has always been that the difference of opinion creates a better world. Like, while we talk about consensus, it's a term used in blockchain when we say we need to have consensus. Now, that is needed for, in a technological term of how you mine blocks, as we call it. In EOS, of course, there is no mining. These are actually block produced by trusted entities. But if you go to the basics of blockchain, we call it a consensus model, where everybody agrees, all the distributed ledgers, they agree on what is the right data set, what is the right database. On the other hand, in a DPoS environment, people think that everything has to be based on consensus. My view as a proxy is that we can build various different proxies or very different voting mechanisms and create diversity in the views how the network should be run. And that makes it stronger. That makes it more immune to attacks, because now the network is run by diverse views who are coming to a consensus on how to run the network, even while maintaining their diverse views. That makes sure that people are not biased. That's how I think any democracy should be built. Now, again, it's a pretty difficult thing to achieve in an environment which is, I think we are very biased because of the way the social media leads us to, where people want to come behind an idea. I think this is where proxies play an important role, where we are able to act as middle level governance in the EOS IOS kind of blockchains, and where we are providing this perspective. And that's the goal we are trying to bring. I would say that when you have multiple different proxies standing behind different block producers for achieving like different criteria, for maintaining the network using different criteria, that's where I think the network gets stronger and stronger. So that's overall, I think, my view on how I see as a proxy, as a voter on the network. I think EOS is pretty much it has gone the public blockchain path. Anybody can register, and anybody can buy the token and go and vote. On the other hand, what I see Telos is doing, they created a little more hard governance approach. There was certain changes which I understand are designed to give it little more kind of trust on the block producers, little more control over, like, knowing the block producer, having certain very strong criteria around how you can be a block producer, and not just anybody anonymously coming and making blocks. Now, that is, again, it's a different use case, I would say. A lot of people believe that they want much more, like, approachable block producer, which is a great thing in DPoS, which is important for EOS. But also, the difference is how you come and approach. How do you approach a network? Ultimately, technology is same. As a developer, it doesn't matter, because it's ultimately you are developing a technology which you are relying on a protocol, and that protocol is secured by a certain number of nodes. Now, how do you go about and defining the differences? A lot of people ask me, what's the difference? I say it's more about the adoption, it's more about the community. EOS is the main net, which as we call it, and the amount of community backing we have in various regions, nobody can compare when we talk about any of the chains. While in locally, if you can build communities, you can have thousands of EOS chains ultimately, and that's what I think. Even when we talk to somebody like Dan Larimer, who's the architect of EOS IO, and when he says that he foresees and he always thought that it will be thousands of chains, so that is not about what is the value of this chain; it's about what is the value of the community. Why should somebody build on top of a new chain versus EOS mainnet? I think that will all be determined by what's the community you're targeting. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time, and I think what I see in EOS when as a proxy, when we engage, there are a lot of passionate people. There are a lot of people who are engaged on a daily basis. They debate about governance aspects. They debate about a lot of continuous changes happening in the whole network, as well as a lot of people working technically, bringing new features. We talk about still, because it's a developing technology. We are not ready yet. We are talking about Rex. We are talking about so many other new features coming in. We don't even have IBC yet. We don't have multi-threading. So there are so many things which are still evolving from a technology perspective. Secondly, there is a lot of things evolving on governance aspects. So it's a matter of how you go and build your own community around a certain topic. And what I see in Telos is it's a very heavily governance-focused chain where it's taken the EOS IO. What is exciting is they're doing a lot of experiments. There are a lot of new ideas being developed. And that is something which needs to be seen in terms of how it really impacts a typical DPoS. And that's, I think it's a great thing. It's a great progress in people being more flexible, because there are less eyes on a certain experiment versus like you're doing something on EOS. People are more worried about, there are a lot more stakeholders who are worried about the token price. When you start a new chain, you have a lot more freedom because you have less influence. And also, I think Telos, the way they designed is they cut out all the initial whales in the system. That was another way to reduce the influence of these big players and people not worrying about the people who are sitting on millions of tokens. Now, as I said, like there can be difference of opinion on how people accept these various chains, but ultimately it's a still an early stage of governance. And as a proxy, I think it's very exciting for me to learn what is going on in this new ecosystem and how things evolve. Like on a daily basis, we see something new happening. Even I think we talked about referendums. I think if you are following some of the recent governance things which happened in 2019. After 7 months of launch, we did launch the referendum platform early on this year. And a lot of people are suggesting changes because this now gives power in your hand of you can go vote and make changes on the network. It's not easy to get the thresholds which referendum need. And now we are seeing a next step in DPoS where people are taking those referendums. Like EOS New York, I think a couple of days back, they posted the results of their new user agreement on EOS IO. And they're looking for approval from block producers, looking at, because people who wanted to vote, they have voted on referendum. And there is a kind of apathy on people are not trying to vote because maybe they don't believe in referendums or they're not engaged enough. You can raise your voice if you really think it is important for you to vote against it, but in the process they are directly moving to 15 by 21 vote, which is the typical on-chain governance model of EOS, where out of like more than 2/3 block producer can vote and make changes directly on the chain. That is being tested out, and it will be interesting to see how that develops. So every day we are seeing these kind of efforts being made to try out something new, which is not necessarily predefined or which is not something which we all agree on. And this difference of opinion, I think this is going to make the overall technology stronger, because ultimately we have, as I started with, blockchain or decentralization. These are all very subjective terms. I don't think that matters when you are building a business on top of it. What matters is you have a usable chain in EOS IO, and you can go and build applications. While there are enough community members, and if the community is strong, they will make sure that the progress is happening at the base layer. And that's a good divide between technology and the people who are developing on top and people who are running the governance aspect of the chain. So it's a fairly balanced approach. While there will always be controversies, people who are not involved, you will keep hearing all kind of discussions around what is right or what is wrong in a very unique way that anybody can go start mining on their computers. That is something which has been proven not to be either cost efficient or, like we talk about all the energy consumption and so on. I think I don't want to go there, but most of you should already know that proof of work versus proof of stake, there are certain balanced approaches people have taken, and most of the people have now agreed that proof of stake is the future of blockchain. Now, this delegated proof of stake on EOS and EOS IO, I would say we should always split between two levels, where we say governance aspect is community driven. The stronger the community, the stronger that governance will become. But technology wise, it's all same. It's all like if you're developing on top, which I am very passionate about. In addition to governance as a proxy, I'm also very passionate about building on top, because ultimately that's what the blockchain was designed for, to actually build applications, to actually go and make changes in the real world, change the way the applications operate, like how you really go and interact with the web applications. I think that's something which will really bring the adoption from end user, while the community strength in governance aspect is always needed for DPoS to keep the trust, so that developers can keep coming. So these are the two things which we should look at separately, but ultimately they give you guidance on where we are heading as EOS or any other EOS IO chain like Telos. So this is, I think, mostly I wanted to talk about, but as I cannot hear anybody and I don't see any comments, I will stop here and look for feedback on if there are any questions, any comments, and we can maybe have a more interactive discussion. Okay, I see a question. Let us know, how did you get involved in crypto space? So I think crypto is very difficult world for me, because I am more excited about blockchain as a space versus crypto. I think everybody heard about blockchain at certain stage. I have a background of consulting the VC firms for technology investments. I have been involved in quite a few reviews of startups and technology companies, and we keep doing we do have monthly reviews. During that process, we used to always hear about blockchain, and especially in early days, I think blockchain was all about Bitcoin. At that time, to be frank, I was not super excited about cryptocurrencies. I think this was one of the reasons that I was not actively involved at that stage. Maybe let's talk about 2013, 2012, 2013. That's when it started gaining a lot more importance than early days, when very small niche area or very few people were engaged in Bitcoin space. I think 2012 to 2014, I would say, was the phase where Bitcoin came into mainstream. A lot more people were talking about it. And around that time, I used to hear about it. I think the lack of more structured products, lack of exchanges which were reliable, that kept me and most of the people I was working with pretty much away from these so-called cryptocurrency, we used to call it. In those days, there was no term cryptocurrency. In those days, it used to be just Bitcoin. I think when Ethereum came along, and when the whole blockchain space opened up for applications beyond currency, that's where I think I got involved, because that's when I started seeing a lot more applications potential and a lot more ideas coming from this startup world. I did started engaging, I would say I started looking at Ethereum projects. I did invest in Bitcoin as a personal capacity, but I was not convinced about the long-term future of cryptocurrencies as they started calling it later on. But I think overall, when I started realizing the potential of blockchain, I would say it became obvious that with the smart contracts, with the platforms coming along, it was a very powerful technology, because we started seeing, I was in the mobile world looking at all these applications using cloud, all the issues we were expecting. So I was I think I was doing a lot of research on social media at that time as well. And I was expecting this. What is happening today in Facebook world? This is something which I had written a white paper and I had presented to a few of the communities on what are the potential issues when you have this trusted entity in a black box building algorithms like Google or Facebook. That becomes your source of information. How this will have a problem. Now that got me excited into blockchain. How I got into EOS, I think it's very obvious from there, because once I was in Ethereum world, everybody who was bringing an app, when some VC go and asks a question, and I'm on the board, I'm saying, okay, let's go and review this product, and we say, what is your end game? What is your plan to launch? How many people can you bring on board? 80 to 90% of the people had no plan, because they were kind of limited by Ethereum's capacity to scale. So EOS was a kind of a no-brainer as soon as it was announced by Dan Larimer. We were already aware a little bit about Steam. I think, again, I was not into the crypto world as much as some of the other people who are in EOS, because I think a lot of people came from Steemit on EOS. I was aware of Steam, but I was not very active. Because I joined late in Steemit, what I realized is that it was very highly manipulated system. So I stopped. I was not excited. Like a lot of people here who were early on in Steemit, I think they believe in Steemit. I gave up on Steemit very early on, maybe because I joined at a time when it was already controlled by bots or some big influencers there. But what I knew is that this is like the DPoS works. I was aware of BitShares, and I was aware of the legacy of Dan Larimer. But as the major reason why I joined EOS was when I was still evaluating all the Ethereum stuff, and I realized that it cannot scale and it will not work. And as soon as this white paper was announced, and when I looked into it more and more, it convinced me that this is the right solution for the blockchain applications. And that's how I got involved. It was a long answer. I hope that answered the question about how I got into crypto and EOS. Other question is the future of Telos. Means it's very difficult for me to say the future of Telos, because I think right now I see it's one of the strongest community in the sister chains outside EOS. So when you say EOS mainnet, it has it is all the value of EOS is all in mainnet community. If you go to any country, like we have this, mostly I think most of us who are English speaking, who are in Western world, being in US here, we are mostly engaged with very small amount of communities, like who are very active on Telegram and English speaking channels. When I go interact with a lot of Chinese community members, and I see it's a EOS mainnet has huge community there. When I look at when I go to Korea, I'm lucky that I get to go to Korea quite often because of some other business reasons. I go there. It's amazing, huge community. So there's so many, like it's a worldwide phenomenon. EOS. What we have in Telos is right now, I think it's still early days. I would say I see it's one of the strongest community outside EOS mainnet, in terms of number of people, in terms of talent I see, in terms of the block producer who are running it, and the quality of those technically, as well as the community passion I see. I don't see it in any other chain on EOS.io. And so I think it's, as I keep reminding people, it's all about building communities, building the right messaging. One thing which I think Telos has sometimes done, which personally I'm not a fan of, is trying to say that Telos has a better governance than EOS. That's something which I think any chain should avoid, because there's nothing better here. Like it's a very, very small portion of people who are involved in blockchain right now. So the goal should be to go and take the technology to rest of the world rather than trying to compete internally. And I think every community has its strength, and Telos, I think, has a lot of good people behind it, and especially the block producers I see. Some of them are really amazing talent who did not make it into EOS mainnet, and they are able to influence Telos a lot. So that's what I see as a future of Telos. If they can keep building on that rather than kind of an anti-mainnet approach, I think that would be really a big strength for Telos. And they can prove these experiments and create a business case for dApps to say, this is a more controlled blockchain as compared to EOS mainnet, which is a little bit of wild, wild west because of the public nature of it, because anybody can join. There are anonymous BPs right now on EOS mainnet, which we cannot reach out to. So those are the weaknesses which Telos is trying to address. But I think in the process, Of course, it is yet to be tested. It's still early days, and I would wait to see how, if and ever the prices or the tokens go higher in price on Telos, how will it be able to still maintain that kind of better access in terms of better governance, because it's all about when we say 51% attack in proof of work chain, in proof of stake chain also, if your tokens are limited and if you have limited number of people and smaller communities and the distribution is not good, proof of stake has no meaning. I think EOS was very useful because of the mainnet distribution of tokens, because of the year-long ICO. It was a huge success, and it also created this real benefit of proof of stake, where the tokens were widespread in China, Korea, as I talked about, in the Western world. It was not limited to a region. All right, there's a question on Blockstart. Okay, so this is the second part. So I think a lot of people know me as Investing with a Difference, as the community member on EOS. The second part of me is the Blockstart, which I have been actively working on. And this started late 2018, but it was more, I think, taking shape in 2019. When I believe that now my focus, my personal energy is shifting more towards building rather than, I think I'm pretty confident on the success of EOS right now, as the community is strong, as I started talking about earlier. We have a base protocol which is running very well. We have a very strong performance coming out. Like, we see a lot of records being broken in first 6 or 7 months of EOS mainnet in working. Now, I think what I see is that there is a lack of apps which are meaningful, which are really, I think all of us were excited about blockchain, not because of gambling apps, right? Means it's what we see today. People are very happy with the DAP radar and all the EOS IO apps which are breaking records. Those are mostly, I call them, half of them are Ponzi schemes. They are just trying to sell you a token, give you some dividends for some time, while the bag holders are left with nothing but useless coins. On the other hand, yes, there is I do not want to say that the gambling and online gaming is something to sneeze at. These are like really big use cases, and if somebody is really seriously building it, and some of them are real good applications. But I think beyond the gambling apps, beyond the obvious things which we are seeing, like the exchanges and so on, I would say that there's a lot more which can be done, which is very important for building blockchain applications. And that's what I think Blockstart focuses. Then when we started building, we started an incubator. So Blockstart is a Silicon Valley incubator. We are incubating some dApps on EOS. We are very actively working with on ideas. Then I realized that there's a lack of developers. Like, blockchain developers are very difficult to find. We started doing a lot more education around blockchain. We are building communities locally. We are trying to, in Silicon Valley, it's a Ethereum hub. I know that because of the kind of investments VCs are making in Ethereum. We are trying to educate people about EOS and have more people come and build. And we need to remember, it's a pretty early days in EOS. We are still learning that the tools are not ready. We are still learning that there are very few people who are productive on EOS tools today. So Blockstart has started with a lot more education material. We are trying to create, we are also partnering with some blockchain university. We are creating a certification course for EOS.io. So if you join Blockstart.1, I think right now we are, ourselves, we are struggling because, as I said, lack of developers is the biggest issue in EOS world. And I think we need to start bringing more regular developers. I think there are, writing a blockchain app is not about smart contracts only. We also need to get people who are used to writing standard apps, because 80 to 90% of the work you will do when you're developing a blockchain app is you will be developing a web interface, you will be developing the standard databases and so on. We need to get the best developers from those standard mobile app and web app world to start learning blockchain and seeing the potential of it. And that's, I think, the goal of Blockstart. Where we are trying to create education, we are trying to build. We are right now in process of working on a couple of projects, which we will be announcing soon, where we are trying to apply blockchain to real world use cases and trying to really change the way on an everyday basis what we use on web. Okay, I have a couple of other questions here saying favorite dApps on EOS. Oh, it's very difficult to say. I think there's quite a few apps coming, especially in last couple of months. I think we have really amazing stuff happening on EOS. So let me not name one. I think there are so many. I think gaming side, we have EOS Knights has been maintaining strong. It was very, very basic game, I would say, but it has been maintained. This shows that really when you build for real, I think I was the first one, I think, who started playing EOS Knights very early on, and I was trying to do some videos on it. And I remember that people did not believe that, oh, that's not a lot of coverage happened, but that is the kind of game which is still going strong after like 6 or 7 months. But I think what I'm trying to show is that gaming wise, you have this, I keep hearing what is item games. I'm very excited about mythical games. These are two very big game houses who are doing it. I'm excited about some other gamings like, Prospector and so on. But outside gaming, I think Emanate is an amazing app. I'm very excited about that. eDNA Edna, I think that's an amazing app it's a real world application of blockchain, and it's a game changer in the world of how these things are dealt and which are impossible to do outside blockchain. I think there are a lot of social media apps coming. We have seen Murmur. We just have Sense launching on EOS. We have Lumios, which is doing very well and they're actually generating revenues. It's very impressive the way they have really used EOS community to create a huge set of user base. So I think there are a lot of exciting stuff happening. I can't even list enough because there are so many good apps on EOS. And these are people who are like experienced. Like when I talk to these people who are developing apps, it's the unique thing about EOS dev developers is these are the people who are not like your standard blockchain developers who are like 20, 30-year-old who are just looking for how to quickly develop something and launch a coin. That's what happened in 2017-18 craze of ICOs. When I look at EOS dev developers, I look at seasoned people who have these, which is not even their first or second startup. Like they have already proven and they are successful in their previous life, even before blockchain or even on blockchain in other platforms. And those are the people I'm seeing developing on EOS, which is why I don't think I'm excited about any other platform like means or all. Of course, I know that Ethereum has one of the strongest developer pool, and it's not like there's a lack of quality there. But the matter of fact is, when I see the people who are developing on EOS, those are like serial entrepreneurs who have actually delivered very, very high quality products, and they've exited, they've made millions of dollars, and then they are very, very excited about EOS, and that's what keeps me going on. Like this is where people can really build end products, which are not possible on most of the other chains. Is the crypto winter over? When is the next bull run? Of course, if I knew, then I think we will all be very rich if anybody knew. So I think it's nobody knows. Means I don't think it's even worth commenting. It's very difficult to put a value. Means all these. What one point I would like to highlight here is we got overexcited maybe in 2017 and around that time, where the market cap of the whole Bitcoin and everything else was what, $800 billion, which is crazy because you need to understand blockchain has not delivered anything. It's a promise for future. There is no real business being generated on blockchain which can value and demand billions of dollars of valuation. It's all speculation. The price of a coin or how this whole crypto industry sees it is a bubble. It was a bubble. It is still a bubble if you compare it with some of the other technologies. Like just to put the things in perspective, Uber, which is worldwide service, which is used everywhere, it was a non-blockchain, but it was still a decentralized service where anybody can join Uber and anybody can give rides and so on. I think anybody who's using Uber should realize that it is everywhere. It is so successful. The valuation of Uber is $50 billion. So why should Bitcoin have much higher valuation? The reason is potential. People talk about it's all speculation. The price of a coin is all about the future potential, and that's why you are paying that much price. So it ran in 2017, everything ran away, assuming that we are already there and everything is ready. And then I think it's a matter of bubbles, which it can have any amount of price. People keep coming back to me. Of course, I have been running a lot of investor communities also. People keep coming back to me and saying, Oh, you know what? 14 months of bear market have passed. That was the last time. 14 months was the bear market for Bitcoin. We should be rallying now. This is the funniest comments I see, because you need to understand that these markets, these are no formulas. The pricing, there is no formula. I haven't been involved in private equity world. Valuation is a very, very complex science, and anybody who is assigning value to a blockchain project today, he's fooling himself. There is no valuation possible. It's all overinflated. It's all about people who believe in it. They believe, yes, the potential of the technology itself is trillions of dollars. It's not even billions, it's trillions of dollars. The path to that is not defined yet. I don't know if it will be Ethereum, Bitcoin, EOS, or even something else. You need to always remember that things keep changing. If you look at the history, no single technology dominated forever. Whether we will get there with EOS, EOS has the potential. I strongly believe in EOS as a technology. It has a potential to scale. We have amazing community, amazing developers. We keep seeing new solutions every day, which are making real world use cases possible. The future, nobody knows whether we can really hit that potential of trillions of dollars on blockchain with EOS, or something else will come along, or whether it will happen in 1 or 2 years, or it will take 10 or 20 years. We used to have artificial intelligence based movies in 1980s, when everybody thought that robots are going to take over in next 10 or 20 years. That was the potential of AI, and we have not seen that happen even now. Even we are doing very basic things with AI. We are only doing speech recognition, voice recognition, and so on with AI. Blockchain, it has the potential. We had this bubble, but we don't know whether blockchain will really solve the issues in next 1 or 2 years, or it will take 10 or 20 years. So that is something which nobody knows. So we are all kidding ourselves if we think that it's a given thing that this market will rally and we will have all-time highs all over again in next 1 or 2 years. While it can happen, means of course I don't know anything. I don't know any. Nobody knows this. And but on the other hand, in the true valuation sense, when you look at it from the way what the world I have seen in private equity or anywhere, when we analyze the valuation of a company, I don't think right now whatever valuation we are seeing, it's all based on potential. So there is no reason for it to, like, fundamentally it doesn't. It should not be billions of dollars worth. What is the last question? I see Rex. Okay, yeah, Rex is very exciting for multiple reasons. I think Rex is one of the best innovation in EOS world. What we need to understand is that EOS was designed for free transactions while generating the fees internally in the system. Like, we do have inflation for BP Pay, but we also have certain other fees like RAM fees and so on. Plus, it's a resource-driven network, so you can lend resources. And Chintai, as a service, has proven that you can. There are people who want the resources. They don't, and they want an easy and cheaper way rather than buying your tokens. So Rex is one of the most critical thing. Now, whether it will improve voting is difficult to say, because I personally believe it will if it is implemented in the way it is defined right now. That is, you need to vote for 21 block producers, or you need to assign proxy. Now, again, as I say, right, means my view is that most of the people are really investors and they believe in technology. They are not here for bad intentions. A lot of people believe that everything is manipulated. But the fact is, there are 75% or so voters or tokens are not voted. If you look at, yes, Huobi, ZB, Bitfinex, these are the exchanges who are voting. We can all question about how they make decisions on voting and whether they are fair or manipulated. But right now, Binance does not vote. OKX does not vote. These are the biggest exchanges. If you go and look at the wallets and how much of EOS tokens they are holding, if both of these exchanges, just two exchanges I mentioned, if they vote, there will be 100 million new tokens coming into the system. And top block producer today in top 21 are, and then Bithumb, yes, Han, thanks for that. I think Bithumb is another one, Upbit. So we're talking about, like, if you talk about these 3 or 4 exchanges, Binance, OKX, Bithumb, Upbit, we're talking about 200 million tokens. Now, if the Rex is available, when people realize if those exchanges continue to not vote, I'm sure that the people who are depositing their tokens in those exchanges, and then they see their friends who are owning their own wallets getting, even if they're getting like 1% APR or 2% APR, it doesn't matter, however small it is. It can be maybe on 100 EOS, you're only going to get 1 EOS in the end of the day or end of the year, but slowly. And think about a scenario like what happened in December with gambling games. Think about one of these runaway apps, one of these social media apps, or some of these apps becoming huge success, and suddenly CPU is in demand, Rex can really give you much more returns. It happened with Chintai. I think at one point, Chintai was offering a 20 to 30% APR on the resource lending. Just one success can just move a lot of tokens out of exchanges and people coming and voting. So this is, and worst case scenario, some people just argue that, oh, when as and when Rex is available, all these exchanges will also start voting and giving rewards to people for keeping the people on their exchanges. That itself is a huge success, because right now, if you are really, you cannot create a controversy or like a conspiracy theory that all the exchanges are going to be vote trading and helping the same BPs. That's not going to happen. Even these big houses, if Binance votes, maybe they will just vote randomly. Let's assume worst case scenario, they vote randomly. I'm sure they will not be colluding with ZB or Huobi. These are competitors. Then Bithumb and Upbit are totally different. They are in Korea. They are not even associated with any of these exchanges. So worst case scenario is these exchanges will start voting and rewarding their token holders. But still, they will bring more diversity of voting. Still, they will bring more voting into the system just to get that Rex. So I think Rex is a very critical implementation, I would say. It is very important for EOS voting participation. All these exchanges, I think, they have a value because they are bringing a lot of new investors. People hate exchanges who see that the negative effect of these exchanges, but I think long run, I'm sure that if we enable Rex and the rewards for voting, that will be a game changer for EOS, and that will really change the voter participation. And as soon as we have more participation, all the negatives we see, that one or two big exchanges are controlling the top 21, that will not be applicable anymore. Suddenly, we will see the dynamics changing, bringing tens of millions of tokens or hundreds of millions of tokens into voting from zero right now. And just go and look at today's how much total you need. Like, you need hardly 100 million tokens to be number one or number two on this EOS mainnet. So another set of 100 million will totally change the dynamics. So I'm a big believer in Rex fixing a lot of issues. With all the, yes, it's not ideal. There are a lot of still there are a lot of gameplays which can be done. The game theory will be visible to us, but I'm convinced that it will be much better than what it is today. It is a continuously improving process, and we will learn more when that happens.